She thought rock bottom was losing everything after the breakup. She was wrong. Rock bottom was standing in a fluorescent-lit convenience store at midnight while her ex-boyfriend mocked her body in front of strangers, his new girlfriend laughing at his side. Lena Brooks had learned to survive humiliation, poverty, and the crushing weight of a secret she carried alone. But she never expected salvation to walk through that door in a $1,000 suit, or that the dangerous stranger who'd once touched her in darkness would return to claim what she'd been hiding for 6 months. One night changed everything. Twice. If you're ready for a story about power, protection, and the price of standing up to cruelty, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Lena's story travels. Oh, the fluorescent lights of quick-stop convenience hummed with the particular frequency of desperation. That 2 a.m. buzz that said everyone here had run out of better options. Lena Brooks stood in the back corner near the refrigerated section, her hand trembling slightly as she calculated whether she could afford both the prenatal vitamins and the package of discounted chicken breasts that expired tomorrow. The vitamins won. They always won. She'd become an expert at these calculations over the past 6 months. Rent or electricity, bus fare or lunch, pride or survival. The math of poverty had a way of simplifying life down to brutal choices, each one chipping away at the person she used to be. The person she used to be wouldn't have been caught dead in this neighborhood at this hour, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, wearing sweatpants that had seen better days, and a hoodie that did almost nothing to hide the gentle swell of her stomach. The person she used to be had worked as a junior marketing associate at a respectable firm, had lived in a studio apartment in a safe neighborhood, had dated Caleb Hart, and believed his promises about their future. That person was gone. Humiliation and heartbreak had a way of killing off old versions of yourself. Lena grabbed the vitamins and turned toward the register, keeping her eyes down the way she'd learned to do. Invisibility was a survival skill in this part of the city. Don't make eye contact. Don't draw attention. Don't give anyone a reason to notice you exist. She almost made it. Holy shit! Lena! The voice hit her like a physical blow, stopping her 3 steps from the counter. She knew that voice. Had heard it whisper promises in the dark. Had heard it laugh with friends. Had heard it turn cruel when he'd decided she wasn't worth keeping. Caleb Hart stood near the entrance, his arm wrapped around a woman Lena didn't recognize. Blonde, thin, wearing clothes that cost more than Lena's monthly grocery budget. The kind of woman Caleb had always said he wanted. The kind Lena had tried and failed to become. "Oh my God, it is you." Caleb's face lit up with the particular delight of someone who'd stumbled onto entertainment. "Babe, this is Lena, the ex I told you about." The blonde looked Lena up and down with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating livestock, her nose wrinkled slightly. "This is her? Really?" Lena felt her face flush hot. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs had turned to stone. The cashier, a tired-looking kid who couldn't have been more than 19, glanced up from his phone, sensing drama. "Wow!" Caleb moved closer, and Lena caught the familiar scent of his cologne. Expensive. Everything about Caleb was expensive, funded by family money he liked to pretend he'd earned himself. "You look different." Different meant worse. She could hear it in the way he drew out the word. "I'm just buying something." Lena's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "I'll get out of your way." No, stay." Caleb held up a hand, his smile widening. "I haven't seen you since what was it? Oh, right, since you completely fell apart after we broke up. How long ago was that? 6 months? 7 months and 4 days, but Lena wasn't about to correct him. "Disappeared," Caleb continued, warming to his subject. His girlfriend had her phone out now, either recording or texting. Lena couldn't tell which was worse. "Nobody knew where you went. Sarah from your old office said you just stopped showing up, lost your job over it, right?" Lena's throat tightened. She'd lost more than her job. She'd lost her apartment when she couldn't make rent, lost her friends when she couldn't afford to meet them at the restaurants and bars that made up their social life, lost her dignity in a slow hemorrhage of small humiliations that had brought her here to this store at this hour. "I've been managing," she said quietly. "Managing." Caleb laughed, and the sound scraped against something raw inside her. "Is that what you call this? Jesus, Lena. I mean, I feel bad about how things ended, but I didn't think you'd completely give up on yourself. Caleb, no, seriously. He gestured at her with the energy drink he'd picked up, his movements loose and confident. He'd always been confident, born to money, raised to believe the world would bend to his will. Look at you, you've gained, what, 30 pounds? 43, his girlfriend offered helpfully. Lena's hands moved instinctively to her stomach, protective. The baby shifted inside her, a small flutter of movement that she felt but they couldn't see. I'm just concerned, Caleb said, his voice taking on that false sympathy that was somehow worse than outright cruelty. We dated for 2 years, Lena. I care about you. And seeing you like this, living in whatever dump you're living in, wearing clothes that look like you found them in a donation bin, letting yourself go this badly, it's sad. It's really sad. The cashier shifted uncomfortably but didn't intervene. The two other customers in the store, a middle-aged man buying lottery tickets and a woman in scrubs who looked like she'd just finished a double shift, pretended not to listen while obviously listening. Lena felt the weight of their attention like hands pressing down on her shoulders. I'm doing fine, she managed. You're clearly not. Caleb moved even closer, and Lena caught the smell of alcohol under the cologne. He'd been drinking. That made this worse. Drunk Caleb had always been meaner than sober Caleb. I mean, maybe this is some kind of wake-up call. Like, you hit rock bottom and now you can start working on yourself again? There are programs for people like you. Therapy. Weight loss groups. People like me, Lena repeated, her voice barely a whisper. People who let a breakup destroy them. Caleb's tone turned serious, like he was offering genuine wisdom instead of cruelty wrapped in concern. Look, I know I wasn't perfect. Maybe I could have handled things better when I ended it. But you can't just collapse because a relationship doesn't work out. That's not healthy. His girlfriend made a sympathetic noise. It's really not. My therapist says dependency issues are a major red flag. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, that had broken months ago. This was something deeper. Her sense of self, maybe. The small, stubborn part of her that had insisted she still had dignity, still deserved respect, still mattered. You ended it because I wouldn't sleep with you fast enough, Lena heard herself say. The words came from somewhere outside herself, from the ghost of the woman she used to be. 3 dates. You said I was a prude after 3 dates. Caleb's smile flickered. That was part of it, but... And then you posted about it. Lena's voice was getting stronger now, fueled by something that felt like anger, but tasted like desperation. You told our entire friend group I was frigid. You made fun of me at parties I wasn't invited to anymore. Okay, you're clearly still really emotional about this. Caleb cut her off with the practiced ease of someone who'd never had to listen to perspectives he didn't like. Which kind of proves my point about the dependency thing. Maybe you should talk to someone. A professional. She definitely should, the girlfriend agreed. Lena looked at the woman properly for the first time. Early 20s, perfect makeup even at 2 a.m., designer purse hanging off her shoulder, everything Lena used to think she wanted to be. How long have you two been together? Lena asked. 4 months, Caleb said proudly. Ashley and I met at... So you started dating her 2 months after we broke up. Well, yeah, but that's not... Was she why you ended it? The question escaped before Lena could stop it. Were you already seeing her? Caleb's face flushed. That's completely irrelevant to... He was. Ashley's voice was matter-of-fact, almost bored. But honestly, looking at you now, I don't feel that bad about it. He clearly upgraded. The words hit like a slap. Lena felt her eyes burning, tears threatening. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. The thing is, Caleb said, his voice taking on that lecturing tone he used when he wanted to sound wise, relationships are about evolution, growth. And you and I, we weren't growing together. You were holding me back with your insecurities and your need for constant validation. Ashley gets that I need space, independence. Is that what you call cheating? Lena's voice broke on the last word. Independence? See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Caleb threw up his hands like she'd proven his point. You're still so bitter, so angry. That's why you look like this now. That's why you're shopping at a convenience store at 2 in the morning wearing clothes that barely fit. You're punishing yourself because you can't let go. Lena's hands trembled around the bottle of vitamins. The baby moved again, stronger this time, a reminder of what she was protecting, of why she endured. I need to go, she said quietly. Running away again. Caleb shook his head, disappointed. That's your pattern, Lena. When things get hard, you run. When relationships require work, you give up. That's why you'll always end up alone. The cruel irony of it, him accusing her of giving up, of running, when he'd been the one to discard her, was almost funny. Almost. I mean, look at yourself, Caleb continued, gesturing at her again with mounting enthusiasm, like he was just getting started. You're what, 32? 33? Living in poverty, no job, no prospects, no self-respect. Is this really how you want to spend your life? Is this the example you want to set? Something in his phrasing made Lena's blood run cold. Example for who? Caleb blinked, and she saw the moment he realized he'd said too much. I just meant, in general, for yourself. You know, Ashley said, examining her nails with studied disinterest. I heard from Sarah that Lena's been posting weird stuff on social media. Baby things. Like she's pretending to be pregnant or something. Super sad. Lena's heart stopped. She hadn't posted anything, had barely used social media in months, but the observation cut too close. Her hand moved to her stomach again, protective and damning. Are you? Caleb's eyes dropped to where her hand rested. His expression shifted from mockery to something harder. Holy shit! Are you actually pregnant? That's none of your business. Whose is it? His voice turned sharp. Because you wouldn't even... It's not yours, Lena said quickly. Too quickly. Caleb's laugh was ugly. Obviously, you were too uptight to sleep with me, but apparently not too uptight to spread your legs for someone else. Who was it? Some random hookup? God, Lena, I thought you had standards. Ashley giggled. The sound was worse than Caleb's cruelty, high and delighted, like this was the best entertainment she'd had all week. So that's what this is, Caleb continued, his voice getting louder. The cashier looked up again, nervous now. You got knocked up by some loser, and now you're living in squalor because you made a stupid mistake. And you want to stand here and judge me? At least I'm not raising a bastard kid in poverty because I couldn't keep my legs closed. The words hung in the air like smoke, toxic and choking. Lena felt herself shrinking, folding inward. This was a mistake. Coming here was a mistake. Engaging with him was a mistake. Thinking she could buy vitamins and chicken breasts and get out unscathed was a mistake. Everything was a mistake. I'm sorry, she whispered, though she didn't know what she was apologizing for. For existing, maybe. For being visible. For having the audacity to occupy space in Caleb's world. You should be, Caleb said. You should be sorry for wasting 2 years of my life, for being so damaged and needy that you couldn't handle a normal adult relationship, for turning into this. He gestured at her with disgust. I dodged a bullet breaking up with you. Looking at you now, I dodged a whole firing squad. Ashley laughed again, and Lena felt something inside her simply stop. The part of her that still believed in fairness or justice or the basic decency of human beings just gave up. She turned toward the exit, abandoning the vitamins on a nearby shelf. She'd find another store, another time, another life where Caleb Hart didn't exist to remind her of every way she'd failed. Yeah, run away, Caleb called after her. That's what you're good at, running and giving up, and the door opened. Later, Lena would try to remember the exact sequence of events. The way the air in the store seemed to change first, growing heavy and charged like the moments before a thunderstorm. The way Caleb's voice cut off mid-sentence, his words dying in his throat. The way even Ashley stopped giggling and went very, very still. But in the moment, all Lena registered was the man who stepped through the door like he owned not just the store but the entire city block it occupied. He was tall, over 6 feet, broad-shouldered in a way that suggested controlled power rather than bulk. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of garment that cost more than Lena's old monthly salary. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that swept the store with the practiced assessment of someone used to evaluating threats and assets in a single glance. 3 men followed him, younger, harder looking, wearing cheaper suits that didn't quite hide the shapes of weapons underneath. They fanned out with military precision, 2 taking positions near the windows, 1 moving to stand near the door. The cashier went pale. The man buying lottery tickets suddenly remembered he needed to be anywhere else and headed for the exit. One of the suited men stepped aside to let him pass, then resumed his position. The store was very quiet. The man in the charcoal suit, the one who was clearly in charge, moved deeper into the space with unhurried confidence. His shoes were expensive leather, polished to a mirror shine. His watch caught the fluorescent light, throwing small reflections across the walls. His eyes found Lena first. Something flickered in his expression, recognition, though Lena couldn't imagine where from. Then his gaze shifted to Caleb, and that flicker became something colder. "I apologize for the interruption," the man said. His voice was measured, cultured, with the faintest trace of an accent Lena couldn't place. European, maybe. Or just the product of expensive schools and international business. "Please, continue your conversation. I'm simply here to make a purchase." He didn't move toward the counter, didn't reach for any product, just stood there, watching, waiting. Caleb had frozen mid-gesture, his hand still raised from pointing at Lena. Color crept up his neck, fear or embarrassment or some combination of both. "We were just leaving," Caleb said, his earlier confidence evaporating. Whatever he saw in the stranger's face had rattled him badly. "Were you?" The man's tone suggested polite interest. "It sounded like you were in the middle of making a point. Something about this woman." He gestured toward Lena with one graceful hand. "Wasting your time, running away? I'm afraid I missed the beginning of your speech." "It's fine," Lena heard herself say. Her voice sounded far away, disconnected from her body. "I was leaving." "No." The single word from the stranger stopped her. Not loud, not aggressive, but absolute. "I'd like to hear the rest of what this gentleman has to say. Please." He gestured toward Caleb with mock courtesy. "Continue. You were explaining how she wasted 2 years of your life?" Caleb swallowed hard. "Look, man, this is a private conversation. In a public store, at 2 in the morning, with an audience." The stranger's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Hardly private, and you seemed so passionate about your message. Surely you stand by your words." Ashley tugged on Caleb's arm. "Baby, let's just go." "An excellent suggestion," the stranger agreed. "But first I think you owe this woman an apology." "What?" Caleb's voice cracked. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who finds cruelty distasteful, particularly cruelty directed at women who are clearly in vulnerable positions." The stranger's eyes dropped briefly to Lena's stomach, then back to Caleb's face. "So, an apology. Now. I don't have to." One of the men near the window shifted position. The movement was subtle but deliberate, his jacket falling open just enough to reveal the shoulder holster underneath. The cashier made a small noise and suddenly became very interested in the floor. "Perhaps I wasn't clear," the stranger said softly. "That wasn't a request." Caleb's face went white. Lena watched him look at the armed men, at the stranger's cold eyes, at the door that suddenly seemed very far away. "I'm sorry," Caleb muttered. "To her, not to me." Caleb turned to face Lena, his expression a mixture of fury and fear. "I'm sorry." "For?" the stranger prompted. "For what I said." "Be specific. What exactly are you apologizing for?" The air in the store felt thick enough to choke on. Lena wanted to tell him to stop, to let it go, that she didn't need this, but her voice had disappeared again. "For calling her names," Caleb said through gritted teeth. "For mocking her, for being cruel. And for cheating on her while you were together, for making fun of her to mutual friends, for suggesting her poverty and her pregnancy are the result of moral failure rather than the circumstances you helped create." Caleb's hands clenched into fists. "How do you—" "I have ears. You're not particularly quiet when you're feeling superior." The stranger's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "Now, the apology. Complete this time." "I'm sorry for all of it," Caleb said, the words coming out in a rush. "I'm sorry for cheating, for talking shit, for everything, okay?" Can we go now? The stranger looked at Lena. Is his apology acceptable to you? Lena stared at him, trying to understand what was happening. This man, this stranger with his expensive suit and armed security, was defending her, a woman he didn't know, for reasons she couldn't begin to guess. It's fine, she whispered. You're too forgiving. The stranger turned back to Caleb. But she's released you from this particular humiliation. I, however, have not. What do you want? Caleb's voice was rising toward panic. I want you to understand something. The stranger moved closer to Caleb with predatory grace. That woman you just spent 10 minutes degrading, she has more worth in her smallest finger than you possess in your entire being. And if I ever hear of you speaking to her, or about her, with anything less than complete respect, I will take it as a personal insult. Who are you to? Someone who keeps his promises. The stranger's smile was sharp as broken glass. And I promise you this, if you cause her one more moment of pain, one more second of humiliation, I will destroy everything you value. Your job, your reputation, your family's business, the trust fund that pays for your lifestyle, all of it, gone. Am I making myself clear? Caleb nodded frantically. Ashley was already halfway to the door. Good. Now get on your knees and apologize properly. You can't. The man near the window moved again. This time his hand went to his jacket, resting on the bulge beneath. Caleb's knees hit the floor so fast Lena heard the impact. His face was red, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down his cheeks. I'm sorry, he choked out, looking up at Lena from the ground. I'm so sorry for everything. Please. I'm sorry. The stranger watched for a long moment, then nodded. Now you may leave, quickly, before I change my mind about the mercy I'm showing you. Caleb scrambled to his feet and ran. Ashley was already gone, the door swinging shut behind her. The sound of Caleb's car starting came seconds later, followed by the squeal of tires as he fled into the night. The store fell silent except for the fluorescent hum. The stranger turned to face Lena fully, and she saw his expression soften. My apologies for the theatrics. Men like that only understand power and consequences. Lena couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. You don't remember me, the stranger said quietly. It wasn't a question. Lena's mind raced, searching for context. Had they met before? Where? When? Then his hand moved, adjusting his cufflink, and she saw the distinctive scar across his knuckles. 3 thin white lines. And suddenly, she was back in a different moment, 7 months ago, in a hotel bar where she'd gone to drown her heartbreak in overpriced wine. A man in a corner booth. Conversation that turned into confessions. His room, his hands, his mouth. One night of forgetting everything that hurt. She'd left before dawn without getting his number, without even getting his last name. Victor, she breathed. His smile warmed. So you do remember. I didn't think you didn't. We never exchanged information. I know. He moved closer, and Lena caught the scent of his cologne. Different from Caleb's. Warmer. I looked for you afterward, called the hotel. They wouldn't give me your information. I thought I'd never see you again. Lena's hand went to her stomach instinctively. Victor's eyes followed the movement, and she saw understanding dawn in his expression. How far along? He asked softly. 6 months. Almost 7. And that night was the only time, in a long time. Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't usually. I know. His hand reached out like he wanted to touch her, then stopped. May I? Lena didn't know what he was asking permission for, but she nodded anyway. His hand settled gently over hers where it rested on her stomach. Warm. Steady. Mine? He asked. The word hung between them like a bridge over a chasm. One Lena could cross or burn. Yes, she said. Victor's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, they held something fierce and protective. And you've been dealing with this alone? Living in... He didn't finish, but his meaning was clear. I manage. You survive. That's not the same thing. His hand tightened slightly over hers. Not anymore. Come with me. Where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere you don't have to count out vitamins against chicken breasts. Somewhere you and our child can have what you deserve. You don't know me, Lena said. One night doesn't mean, one night gave me a child. That means everything. Victor's voice was absolute. And in this moment, standing here watching you shake from confronting the man who hurt you, wearing clothes that don't fit because you've given every dollar to keeping our baby healthy, I know enough. You can't just, I can. He stepped back, releasing her hand but not her gaze. And I am. You're done surviving alone, Lena. I'm here now, and I protect what's mine. The possessive should have frightened her, should have sent her running from this stranger with his guns and his power and his absolute certainty. Instead, for the first time in 7 months, Lena felt something unfurl in her chest. Hope. Okay, she whispered. Victor's smile transformed his face. Good. My car is outside. Bring anything you need from here. Lena looked down at the vitamins she'd abandoned. Victor followed her gaze, then walked over and picked them up along with the chicken breasts. He brought them to the counter where the cashier still stood frozen. Add whatever else she needs, Victor told the kid, pulling out a wallet thick with cards. Prenatal vitamins, food, anything a pregnant woman might require. And give yourself a $500 tip for your discretion about what happened here tonight. The cashier's eyes went wide. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Victor returned to Lena's side. Anything else? She shook her head, overwhelmed. Then let's go home. He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Lena took it. The men near the door moved aside, forming a protective corridor as Victor led her out into the night air. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, sleek and expensive. One of the men opened the back door, and Victor handed Lena inside before sliding in next to her. The interior smelled like leather and money. Lena sank into seats softer than her mattress. Where do you live? Victor asked. We'll collect your things. I don't. It's just a room, in a boarding house. Everything I own fits in 2 bags. Something dark crossed Victor's expression. Show me. The drive took 15 minutes. Lena directed them to the neighborhood she'd been ashamed to name, watching Victor's face remain carefully neutral as they passed boarded-up buildings and clusters of people who scattered at the sight of the Mercedes. Her building was one of the better ones on the block, which wasn't saying much. Wait here, Victor said, but Lena was already shaking her head. I can get my things. It'll take 2 minutes. Then I'll accompany you. They walked up 3 flights of stairs that smelled like urine and mold. Lena's room was at the end of a hallway covered in peeling wallpaper. She unlocked 3 different locks, aware of Victor taking in every detail. The room was barely 10 feet square, a twin bed, a hot plate, a mini fridge, a single window that looked out at a brick wall. The bathroom was shared down the hall. Lena had tried to make it bearable. Clean sheets, a small lamp, her few books stacked neatly on the floor. This is where you've been living, Victor's voice was carefully controlled. For 7 months. Pregnant. Alone. The rent is cheap, and it's safer than some places. Safer than some places. He repeated her words like they were a foreign language. Lena, look at me. She turned. His face was gentle, but his eyes were furious. This ends tonight, he said quietly. Pack your bags. You're never coming back here. Victor, please. The word was soft. Let me do this. Let me give you and our child what you should have had from the beginning. Lena looked around the room that had been her entire world, thought about the calculations, the fear, the endless small degradations of poverty, thought about the baby growing inside her and what kind of life this place represented. Okay, she said again. It took less than 5 minutes to pack. 2 bags, just like she'd said, clothes, toiletries, her books, the one photo she had of her mother. Everything that mattered in her life fit in 2 canvas bags that had seen better days. Victor carried both without comment. Back in the car, Lena watched her building disappear in the side mirror. 7 months compressed into 2 bags and a goodbye she hadn't said out loud. Where are we going? She asked. My home. It's secure, private. You'll have your own space, your own room, until we figure out the next steps. Next steps? Victor's hand found hers in the darkness. Doctor's appointments, proper nutrition, everything you and the baby need, and he paused. Getting to know each other. We made a child together, Lena. I'd like to know the woman carrying her. Her? Or him? But I have a feeling. His smile was visible even in the dim light from passing streetlights. A daughter, which means I'll need to buy a significant number of weapons to discourage future boyfriends. The joke startled a laugh out of Lena. Real laughter, for the first time in months. Victor squeezed her hand. There it is. I was beginning to think I'd never hear that sound. I haven't had much to laugh about. That changes now. The car pulled up to a building Lena recognized from magazine spreads. Glass and steel, ultra-modern, the kind of place that required references and credit checks and 6 months' rent as deposit. You live here? Top floor, the penthouse. Victor helped her out of the car. I know it's not what you're used to, but not what I'm used to? Lena laughed again, slightly hysterical. Victor, I just left a room with a hot plate and no bathroom. A cardboard box would be an upgrade. His expression darkened. Don't diminish what you've survived. You did what you had to do to protect our child. That's not something to make light of. The elevator required a key card. It rose smoothly, silently, opening directly into a massive living space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Lena stepped out and stopped, overwhelmed. The penthouse was bigger than any space she'd ever inhabited. Modern furniture, expensive art, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. Through open doors, she could see a bedroom suite, a home office, what looked like a library. The guest room is through here, Victor said, setting down her bags. It has its own bathroom. I'll have someone bring up appropriate clothing tomorrow. For now, there are robes and toiletries in the bathroom. Lena followed him through the space, her mind struggling to process the change. Hours ago, she'd been counting out vitamins. Now she was standing in a penthouse that probably cost more per month than she'd earned in a year. The guest room was larger than her entire previous apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, made up with what looked like Egyptian cotton. The bathroom had a soaking tub, a rainfall shower, heated floors. I know it's a lot, Victor said quietly. Take your time. Settle in. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. If you need me, I'll be in my office making some calls. At 3 a.m, his smile was grim. The kind of calls I need to make don't follow traditional business hours. I need to make sure Caleb Hart understands the consequences of his actions tonight and ensure he never bothers you again. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Victor's voice was absolute. He humiliated you, threatened you, made you feel worthless. That has a price, and I collect what's owed. There was something in his tone that reminded Lena she didn't actually know this man, didn't know what he did for a living or why he traveled with armed security or how he could make threats about destroying someone's business empire at 3 a.m. with complete confidence. What do you do? She asked. For work? Victor studied her for a moment. Import and export, consulting, investments. I have interests in various industries. It was a non-answer dressed up as information. Lena recognized evasion when she heard it. And the men with guns? Security. I deal with valuable commodities. It's prudent to take precautions. He moved closer, his voice softening. I know you have questions, and I'll answer them, all of them. But right now, you're exhausted. Our baby is exhausted. Rest. We'll talk tomorrow. He was right. Lena felt the weight of the night settling over her like a physical thing. The confrontation with Caleb, Victor's appearance, the drive, this penthouse. It was too much to process. Okay, she said for the third time that night. The word was becoming a mantra, surrender to something better than what she'd known. Victor reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was tender, careful, like she was something precious that might break. You're safe now, he said quietly. I know that's hard to believe, but you are. Both of you. I promise. Then he left, closing the door softly behind him. Lena stood in the center of the guest room, her 2 canvas bags looking ridiculous against the luxury surrounding her. Through the window, the city spread out in lights and darkness, a world away from the view of the brick wall she'd woken to for 7 months. She walked to the bathroom and caught her reflection in the mirror. The same woman who'd stood in that convenience store, being torn apart by Caleb's cruelty. Same messy hair, same tired eyes, same ill-fitting clothes stretched over her pregnant belly. But something was different, something in her expression. The defeated slope to her shoulders had straightened. The hollow look in her eyes had filled with something new. Not just hope, something fiercer. Protection. Victor had looked at her swollen stomach and seen not something to mock but something to claim, had heard Caleb's words and responded with action, had brought her here to this place of safety and luxury, and asked nothing in return except that she let him help. It should have felt like a fairy tale, like something too good to be true. And maybe it was. But standing there in that bathroom, looking at her reflection, Lena made a choice. She'd survived 7 months of impossible circumstances. She'd endured Caleb's cruelty and poverty's endless calculations and the crushing loneliness of facing pregnancy alone. She could survive this too, whatever this was. Whatever Victor's world held, for her baby, for herself, for the woman she'd almost forgotten she could be. Lena turned on the shower, let the water heat until steam filled the bathroom, and stepped under the rainfall spray. The hot water felt like absolution, washing away months of cold showers and shared bathrooms, of making do with too little. She stayed under the water until her fingers pruned, then dried off with towels so soft they felt like clouds. Found a robe in the closet that probably cost more than her entire previous wardrobe. Climbed into the massive bed and sank into sheets that smelled like expensive laundry detergent. The baby moved inside her, a series of small kicks that Lena had learned to interpret as contentment. "We're okay," she whispered to her stomach. "We're going to be okay." Through the walls, faint and muffled, she could hear Victor's voice, speaking to someone in a language she didn't recognize. His tone was cold, precise, nothing like the warmth he'd shown her. Lena should have been frightened, should have questioned what kind of man could make Caleb Hart drop to his knees with just a look, should have wondered about import-export businesses that required armed security. Instead, she felt her eyes growing heavy, felt sleep pulling her down into depths she hadn't reached in months. Safe, protected, claimed. Tomorrow would bring questions and consequences and the reality of what she'd agreed to. But tonight, for the first time in 7 months, Lena Brooks slept without fear. And in his office, Victor Romano made calls that would ensure Caleb Hart understood what it meant to earn the attention of a man who protected what was his. The game had changed, the players had shifted, and the woman who'd been invisible for so long had just become the most important person in a very dangerous man's world. Morning came through floor-to-ceiling windows like a judgment, flooding the guest room with light so bright Lena had to shield her eyes. For a disoriented moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the air too clean. Then memory returned in fragments. Caleb's cruelty, Victor's intervention, the Mercedes gliding through dark streets, this penthouse that felt more like a museum than a home. She sat up slowly, her hand going automatically to her stomach. The baby shifted in response, a reassuring flutter that said whatever chaos surrounded them, this small life continued its steady growth. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47. Lena couldn't remember the last time she'd slept past 6. Poverty had trained her body to wake early, to maximize every hour of potential work or opportunity. Sleeping late felt like a luxury she hadn't earned. Her canvas bags sat where Victor had left them, looking even more pathetic in the morning light. Everything she owned reduced to 2 worn duffels that probably wouldn't pass muster at a donation center. Lena showered again because she could, because the water pressure was perfect and the bathroom had 3 different types of soap and towels that felt like sin against her skin. She dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, her cleanest pair of maternity leggings and an oversized sweater that hid most of her shape, and steeled herself to face whatever came next. The penthouse was silent when she emerged. No sign of Victor or his armed security, just vast empty spaces filled with furniture that looked sculptural rather than functional, and art that probably cost more than most people's houses. She found the kitchen and stopped in the doorway, overwhelmed. Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, a refrigerator that could have stored food for a small army. On the island sat a note in elegant handwriting. "Help yourself to anything. I'll return around noon. 5." Lena opened the refrigerator and stared. Fresh fruit, vegetables, premium meats, cheeses, eggs, milk. The kind of abundance she'd forgotten existed. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the eggs, her mind already calculating their cost before she remembered she didn't have to do that anymore. Or did she? She didn't actually know the terms of this arrangement. Victor had brought her here, given her shelter, but what did he expect in return? Men like him, men with penthouses and armed guards and the power to make other men kneel, didn't do things without expecting payment. The thought made her stomach turn. She set down the eggs and gripped the counter, breathing through a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. "You're being stupid," she told herself quietly. "He knows about the baby. He claimed the baby. This isn't about sex or payment. This is about... what? Responsibility? Protection?" She didn't know Victor well enough to guess his motivations. One night 7 months ago didn't qualify as knowing someone, no matter how intimate the encounter. Footsteps in the hallway made her turn. But it wasn't Victor who appeared. It was a woman in her 50s, professionally dressed, carrying a large garment bag and several shopping bags with logos Lena recognized from department stores she'd never been able to afford. "Ms. Brooks?" The woman's smile was warm, practiced. "I'm Margaret Chen, Mr. Romano's personal assistant. He asked me to bring you some essentials." Lena stared at the bags. "That's not necessary. I have clothes." Margaret's expression didn't change, but Lena caught the flicker of pity in her eyes as she took in Lena's outfit. "Mr. Romano was quite specific. He said you'd need appropriate maternity wear, comfortable shoes, and toiletries. I've brought a selection based on your approximate size. We can exchange anything that doesn't fit or suit your taste." She began unpacking with efficient movements, laying out maternity dresses, soft pants, sweaters that looked expensive but comfortable. Everything in Lena's size, everything clearly chosen with thought rather than just grabbed off a rack. "How did he know my size?" Lena asked. "Mr. Romano is very observant." Margaret pulled out a small box from one of the bags. "He also asked me to include these. Prenatal vitamins, the same brand you were purchasing last night. And I've scheduled you an appointment with Dr. Sarah Morrison for this afternoon at 2. She's one of the best obstetricians in the city." The efficiency of it was staggering. In less than 12 hours, Victor had arranged clothing, vitamins, and medical care. Like Lena was a problem to be solved through the application of resources and connections. "I can't afford a doctor right now," Lena said quietly. "I've been going to the free clinic, and even that's... Mr. Romano is handling all medical expenses." Margaret's tone was matter-of-fact, like this was completely normal. "Along with any other needs you or the baby might have. He's set up an account for you at City General. Dr. Morrison has admitting privileges there should you need them." Lena felt her throat tighten. Why is he doing this? Margaret looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. "I've worked for Mr. Romano for 8 years. He's many things, but he's not casual about his commitments. If he's brought you here, if he's claiming responsibility for your child, then you and that baby have become his priority. Everything else is secondary. You know about the baby? That it's his? Mr. Romano doesn't keep secrets from me, not the ones that matter." Margaret finished unpacking the last bag, toiletries, makeup, hair products, and turned to face Lena fully. "I know this is overwhelming, and I know you're wondering what he expects from you, so I'll tell you what I've observed, Mr. Romano values honesty, loyalty, and strength. He doesn't respect weakness, but he understands survival. You've been surviving for months. That will matter to him more than you know." Before Lena could respond, Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and nodded. "Mr. Romano is on his way up. I'll leave you to speak with him. The clothes are yours regardless of what you decide about staying here. And the doctor's appointment is scheduled, but you're free to cancel if you choose." She left before Lena could ask what she meant by decide about staying. Like there was a choice to make. Like Lena had options beyond returning to that room with the hot plate and the shared bathroom. The elevator chimed. Lena turned to see Victor step out, dressed more casually than last night, but still polished, dark jeans, a charcoal sweater, leather jacket. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread, all controlled power and dangerous elegance. His eyes found hers immediately. "You slept well? The bed is very comfortable." "Good." He moved into the kitchen, heading for the coffee maker with the ease of routine. Margaret came by. She brought clothes and vitamins and scheduled a doctor's appointment. Lena heard the slight edge in her voice and tried to soften it. "It's very generous." Victor looked at her over his shoulder, one eyebrow raised. But you're uncomfortable with generosity. I'm uncomfortable not knowing what you expect in return. Ah. He poured coffee into a mug that probably cost more than Lena's weekly food budget used to be. Direct. I appreciate that. He took a sip, considering her. What do I expect? Honesty? About the pregnancy? About your health? About what you need? Cooperation with medical care and anything else that keeps you and the baby safe, and eventually, trust. Though I understand that one takes time. That's it? Were you expecting something else? His tone was mild, but Lena caught the steel underneath. I brought you here to protect you, Lena, not to use you. The baby you're carrying is mine. That makes you part of my life now, whether we planned it that way or not. You don't know me, Lena said, echoing her words from last night. One night gave me a child, which means I know the most important thing about you already. Victor set down his coffee and moved closer, stopping a respectful distance away. You're carrying my baby despite having every reason to make a different choice. You've survived poverty and isolation to protect that baby. You endured humiliation from a man who treated you like garbage and still managed to stand in that store with dignity. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Lena felt tears threatening and blinked them back hard. You're giving me too much credit. I didn't have choices. I just endured. Endurance is a choice. Every day you chose to keep going instead of giving up. That's strength, even if it doesn't feel like it. Victor's voice gentled. I know this is strange. I know you're waiting for the catch, for the moment I reveal what I really want. But there isn't one. I want you healthy. I want the baby healthy. I want you to stop looking over your shoulder waiting for the next disaster. That's what I expect. And if I can't trust you, if I decide this is too much and I want to leave, Victor's expression didn't change. Then you leave. I won't stop you, but I will continue to ensure you and the baby have what you need: housing, medical care, financial support. You're not a prisoner, Lena. You're under my protection. Those are different things. The distinction should have reassured her. Instead, it raised new questions. What kind of man are you that you think in terms of protection and claiming? What do you actually do, Victor? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Trying to figure out if you've traded one bad situation for another? Trying to figure out if I'm safe here, or if I've just found a different kind of danger. Smart. Victor leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The truth is complicated. I own legitimate businesses: real estate, import-export, consulting. I also move in circles where violence is always a possibility, and power is the only currency that matters. I'm not a good man by most definitions, but I protect what's mine absolutely. And you and that baby, you're mine now. The possessive should have frightened her. Lena waited for fear to spike through her nervous system, but all she felt was a strange, warm certainty. Caleb, she said, what did you do to him? Nothing he didn't deserve, and nothing permanent. Victor's smile sharpened. His family's company lost several major contracts this morning, coincidentally. His father received some information about Caleb's activities, the cheating, the drug use, the company funds he's been embezzling. By noon, Caleb will be cut off from his trust fund and unemployed. He'll survive, but he'll do it without the cushion of money and influence he's relied on his entire life. Lena's breath caught. You destroyed his life in one night. I removed his ability to hurt you. There's a difference. Victor straightened. He humiliated you publicly, made you feel worthless, threatened our child's mother. That has consequences. I told him what they would be if he didn't apologize. He chose poorly. How did you even... The contracts, the information about the embezzling, how is that possible? I have resources. And people owe me favors. Victor moved closer, his voice dropping. I know this makes you uncomfortable. The speed, the power, the implications of what I'm capable of. But understand this. I would burn down everything he has to keep you safe, and I won't apologize for it. Lena stared at him, trying to reconcile the man who'd brought her vitamins and scheduled doctor's appointments with the one who'd casually destroyed another man's entire life before breakfast. I should be scared of you, she said quietly. Are you? She searched her feelings honestly. Fear should be there, terror even. Instead, she felt something closer to awe, mixed with a disturbing sense of security. No, she admitted. I should be, but I'm not. Good. Victor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand settled over her stomach with the same gentle possessiveness as last night. How is she this morning? Active. She's been kicking since I woke up. She? Victor's smile transformed his face. You think it's a girl too? I don't know. It's just a feeling. Lena covered his hand with hers without thinking. The clinic couldn't tell me. Their ultrasound machine is old, and I could only get one appointment. Dr. Morrison will do a full ultrasound this afternoon. We'll know for certain. Victor's thumb traced a small circle over the fabric of her sweater. Have you thought about names? I didn't want to jinx it. Naming her felt like counting on something I wasn't sure I'd have. You'll have it. I promise you that. Victor's voice was absolute. Our daughter will have everything: security, education, opportunities. She'll never know what it's like to be hungry or afraid or to feel worthless because some small man decided to make himself big by tearing her down. The intensity in his voice made Lena's chest tight. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Victor's expression shuddered. Everyone has history. Mine just taught me the value of power and the cost of not having it. He stepped back, breaking contact. The doctor's appointment is at 2. I'll drive you. I can take a cab. I'm driving you. Not a request. I want to hear what the doctor says. I want to know you're both healthy, and I want anyone who sees you to understand you're not alone anymore. Lena felt something in her chest crack open. When was the last time someone had wanted to be seen with her? Wanted to be associated with her? Caleb had hidden her away toward the end, embarrassed by her weight and her lack of sophistication. Her friends had drifted when she couldn't keep up with their lifestyle. Her family was gone, leaving her alone in the world. But Victor stood there in his expensive kitchen, looking at her pregnant belly and claiming her publicly, demanding to be part of doctor's appointments, making her visible instead of invisible. Okay, she whispered, that word again. Surrender as self-preservation. Eat something first. You need proper nutrition. Victor gestured toward the refrigerator. Margaret stocked foods Dr. Morrison recommended for the 3rd trimester. I'll make breakfast. You cook? I'm not useless in a kitchen. He pulled out eggs, cheese, vegetables. Omelets work? Lena nodded, settling onto one of the bar stools to watch him work. He moved with the same controlled efficiency he brought to everything else, chopping vegetables with practiced precision, whisking eggs in a bowl. Where did you learn to cook? She asked. My mother insisted all her children know how to care for themselves. She said depending on others for basic needs made you vulnerable. Victor poured the eggs into a heated pan. She was right about most things. Was? She died when I was 17. Cancer. His voice remained even, but Lena heard the old grief underneath. My father followed 6 months later, heart attack, officially. But I think he just didn't want to live without her. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Victor added cheese and vegetables, folding the omelet with expert movements. But it taught me that the people you love can be taken from you without warning, which is why I hold tight to what I have and eliminate threats before they become problems. He plated the omelet and set it in front of her with toast and fresh fruit. The smell made Lena's stomach growl embarrassingly loud. Victor's smile was genuine. Eat. I'll make more coffee. Decaf for you. The food was perfect, and Lena ate with the single-minded focus of someone who'd been hungry too long. Victor watched her with something like satisfaction, making his own omelet and eating across the counter from her. Tell me about that night, he said quietly. 7 months ago. What brought you to that hotel bar? Lena swallowed her bite of toast. Caleb had broken up with me 3 days earlier. I'd spent those 3 days crying in my apartment, not eating, not sleeping. My best friend finally dragged me out, said I needed to get dressed up, and remember I was attractive. She took me to that hotel bar because it was expensive and fancy, and she thought it would make me feel better. But did it? Not really. I felt out of place and overdressed, and like everyone could see I'd been crying. Lena stared at her plate. My friend left with some guy she met, said she'd text me later, and I was just alone at the bar, nursing a wine I couldn't afford, feeling sorry for myself. And then, Victor prompted. Then you sent over another glass and a note that said, "You look like you need a friend," which was such a line, but I was drunk enough and sad enough to appreciate it anyway. She glanced up at him. You were sitting in that corner booth, alone, looking as out of place as I felt. I just finished a difficult business meeting, the kind that makes you question your choices and wonder if there's a better way to live. Victor's voice was distant, remembering. I saw you at the bar and thought you looked like someone who understood that feeling. So you sent me wine. And you came over to thank me, and we started talking. Victor's eyes met hers. You told me about Caleb, about the breakup, about feeling like you weren't enough, and I told you about the deal that went bad, the partner who betrayed you, the choice you had to make between revenge and moving forward. Lena remembered. They'd talked for hours, trading confessions like currency. You never told me what you chose. Revenge, always revenge when betrayal is involved. Victor's smile was sharp. But that's not what you want to hear about. You want to know why I took you upstairs. Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. I went willingly. You did. But I offered. And I did it because you looked at me like I was human instead of dangerous, like I was someone who deserved comfort instead of fear. Victor's voice softened. That night wasn't about sex for me, Lena. It was about connection, about finding someone who understood loneliness. It was the same for me, Lena admitted. I'd never done something like that before. One night with a stranger. But you didn't feel like a stranger. No, Victor agreed. You felt like someone I'd been looking for without knowing I was searching. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. And then I left before you woke up, Lena said quietly, because I was embarrassed and scared and convinced you'd regret it in the morning. I didn't. I looked for you. Victor's hand found hers across the counter. Called the hotel, tried to track you down, but you'd given them a fake name and paid cash. You vanished. I didn't think you'd want to find me. I wanted to find you very badly, and now I have. His grip tightened. And you're carrying my child, which means I get a second chance at something I thought I'd lost. Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket, making them both jump. She pulled it out and saw a number she didn't recognize, hesitated, then answered. Ms. Brooks? A professional female voice. This is Detective Lisa Chen with the City Police Department. I'm calling about a complaint filed by Caleb Hart regarding an incident last night at Quick Stop Convenience. Do you have a moment to speak? Lena's blood went cold. Victor's expression sharpened, his hand extending silently. She handed him the phone. This is Victor Romano, he said smoothly. I'm Ms. Brooks' attorney. Any questions regarding last night need to go through me. He rattled off a phone number. Have a good day, Detective. He ended the call and handed back the phone. Caleb went to the police? Lena's voice shook. What did he tell them? Probably that I threatened him. Which I did. Victor's tone was unconcerned. Don't worry, Caleb Hart has bigger problems than filing false police reports. What if they arrest you? They won't. I have lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. Victor stood, pulling out his own phone. But I need to make some calls. Will you be all right for an hour? Lena nodded, even though she felt anything but all right. Victor leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture so gentle and unexpected that Lena froze. Trust me, he murmured. Caleb can't hurt you anymore, and anyone who tries will regret it. Then he was gone, disappearing into his office with his phone already at his ear. Lena sat alone in the massive kitchen, her half-eaten breakfast growing cold, and tried to understand the world she'd stumbled into. A world where men destroyed each other's lives before breakfast and kissed women they barely knew with heartbreaking tenderness. Where protection came with armed guards and police complaints disappeared with phone calls. Where she, invisible, worthless Lena Brooks, had become someone worth protecting. The baby kicked hard, a sharp jab under her ribs. Lena put her hand over the spot and whispered, I don't know if this is smart or crazy, but we're safe, for now. That has to be enough. Through the walls, she could hear Victor's voice, cold and precise, speaking to someone in that language she didn't recognize, making more problems disappear, rearranging the world to keep her safe. Lena looked down at the clothes Margaret had brought, Soft fabrics, expensive brands, everything chosen with care. Looked at the kitchen full of food she didn't have to ration. Looked at the view of a city that had chewed her up and spit her out but looked almost beautiful from this height. 7 months ago, she'd made a choice in a hotel room. One night with a stranger that had given her a baby and changed everything. Now she was making another choice. To stay in this penthouse, to accept Victor's protection, to let him claim her and their child and whatever future they might build together. It should have felt like giving up, like surrender. Instead, it felt like the first smart decision she'd made in months. Lena stood, cleared her plate, and went to try on the clothes Margaret had brought. When Victor returned from his calls, she was wearing a soft maternity dress that actually fit, her hair brushed, looking more like herself than she had in half a year. His eyes swept over her, and something warm flickered in their depths. Beautiful. It's just a dress. It's not about the dress. Victor offered his hand. Ready for the doctor? Lena took his hand and let him lead her to the elevator. Let him help her into the Mercedes. Let him sit beside her in the waiting room at Dr. Morrison's office, his hand never leaving hers. And when the ultrasound showed their daughter, healthy, perfect, exactly 27 weeks along, Lena watched Victor's face transform with wonder and knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, she'd made the right choice. Some men destroyed you, some men saved you, and some men did both while promising the world would burn before they let you fall again. The ultrasound image stayed with Lena for days after the appointment, printed on photo paper that Victor had immediately tucked into his wallet like a talisman. Their daughter, confirmed now, not just a feeling, floating in grainy black and white, her tiny hand near her face as if already shielding herself from the world. Dr. Morrison had smiled at Victor's reaction, the way his jaw had gone tight with emotion when he'd heard the heartbeat, strong and steady through the monitor speakers. Everything looks perfect, the doctor had said, her voice warm with professional reassurance. Baby is measuring right, on track for 27 weeks. Heart rate is excellent. Position is good. And Mom, your blood pressure has come down since your last visit to the clinic. Lena had felt Victor's hand tighten on hers at the mention of the clinic, that free place with its overworked staff and ancient equipment where she'd gone because she had no other options. He hadn't said anything, but she'd felt his anger at what she'd endured radiating through his controlled stillness. Now, 3 days later, Lena stood in the penthouse looking out at the city and trying to adjust to a life that still felt borrowed. Victor had been gone since early morning on business he didn't specify, leaving her alone with Margaret's occasional visits and the strange silence of luxury. The penthouse had everything, except the feeling of being hers. Her phone rang, shattering the quiet. Unknown number. Lena's stomach clenched, remembering the detective's call, but she answered anyway. Lena Brooks? A man's voice, unfamiliar, with an edge that made her skin prickle. Who is this? Someone who knows what you're doing, shacking up with Victor Romano, playing house with a criminal. The voice turned ugly. You think you've hit the jackpot, don't you? Found yourself a sugar daddy with deep pockets? Lena's hand went to her stomach protectively. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Here's some free advice, sweetheart. Romano doesn't keep people around for long. Whatever he's promised you, whatever fantasy you're living, it ends badly. They always do with men like him. Who are you? Lena demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Consider me a concerned citizen, or maybe someone who's seen this story before. A pause. Check your email. I sent you some reading material about your new boyfriend. Might want to know who you're sleeping with before you bring a kid into his world. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen, her heart hammering. She pulled up her email with shaking hands and found a message from an anonymous account. No subject line. The body of the email contained a single link. She clicked it before she could talk herself out of it. The page that loaded was a news article from 4 years ago. The headline stark. Federal investigation targets Romano Enterprises. Allegations of money laundering and racketeering. Below it, a photo of Victor in a suit, stone-faced, flanked by lawyers outside a courthouse. Lena scrolled, reading fragments that made her stomach turn. Suspected ties to organized crime. Shell companies in 3 countries. Witnesses recanted testimony after alleged intimidation. Case dismissed due to lack of evidence, but questions remain. More links followed. a profile piece that painted Victor as a shadowy figure operating in legal gray zones, using legitimate businesses to hide criminal enterprises. An exposé about Romano Enterprises' expansion into Eastern European markets with suspicious speed and cooperation from local authorities. A sidebar about an associate found dead under circumstances the police called consistent with professional execution. The articles were years old, and most ended with the same conclusion: no charges filed, insufficient evidence, witnesses who disappeared or changed their stories. Victor Romano remained untouchable, operating with impunity while law enforcement circled without ever landing a blow. Lena set down her phone and walked to the bathroom, suddenly nauseous. She made it to the toilet just in time, retching until her stomach was empty and her throat burned. This was who she'd trusted, who she'd let claim her and their baby, a man credibly accused of money laundering, racketeering, possible murder. A man who made Caleb Hart kneel in a convenience store and destroyed his life before breakfast. She'd known Victor was dangerous, had sensed the violence underneath his cultured exterior. But reading it in black and white, seeing the federal investigations and the dead associates and the pattern of intimidation, it made it real in a way her instincts hadn't. Lena rinsed her mouth and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back wore an expensive maternity dress and had color in her cheeks from regular meals and decent sleep. She looked healthier than she had in months, safer. But was she? The elevator chimed. Lena heard Victor's voice calling her name, felt panic spike through her chest. She couldn't face him right now, couldn't look at him knowing what she knew. Lena? Victor appeared in the bathroom doorway, his expression shifting to concern. What's wrong? Are you sick? Morning sickness. The lie came easily. Just give me a minute. But Victor was already moving closer, his hand going to her forehead to check for fever. Dr. Morrison said the nausea should be subsiding by now. Should I call her? No, I'm fine. Lena pulled away from his touch, saw his eyes narrow at the rejection. You're not fine. What happened? Lena wanted to lie. Wanted to pretend everything was normal and she hadn't just read about federal investigations and dead bodies. But the words came out before she could stop them. Someone called me, told me to check my email, sent me articles about you. Victor went very still. What articles? Federal investigations, money laundering, racketeering, a dead associate. Lena's voice shook. Is it true? Any of it? Some of it. Victor's tone was carefully neutral. The investigations were real. The allegations were real. The evidence was insufficient because most of the allegations were fabricated by competitors trying to eliminate a business rival. And the dead associate? Died in a car accident. The police investigated thoroughly and found no evidence of foul play. Victor's jaw tightened. But conspiracy theories are more interesting than accidents, so the rumors persisted. Who called me? Who sent the email? I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Victor pulled out his phone, already dialing. What number did they call from? Lena showed him. Victor's expression darkened as he looked at the screen. Then he was speaking rapidly into his phone in that language she didn't recognize, his tone sharp with command. He ended the call and turned back to Lena. My people are tracing it now. Whoever contacted you made a mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind that has consequences. Victor moved closer, his voice softening. Lena, look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I told you I'm not a good man by most definitions. That's true. I operate in spaces where the law is flexible and violence is sometimes necessary. But those articles, they're old news. Investigations that went nowhere because there was nothing to find. Competitors spreading lies to damage my reputation. His hand cupped her face gently. I've never been charged with a crime. Never been convicted. Because I haven't committed the crimes they accuse me of. But you've done other things, Lena said quietly. Things you're not being accused of. Victor's smile was grim. Everyone in business does things they're not proud of. I'm just better at it than most and operate at a level where the stakes are higher. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Victor's thumb traced her cheekbone. I can't undo my past or change the world I move in, but I can promise you this. I will never let that world touch you or our daughter. You're separate from it, protected from it. That's why I have security, why I'm careful, why I eliminate threats before they become problems. Like Caleb. Like Caleb. Like whoever just called you and tried to scare you away from me. Victor's expression hardened. They made a mistake, and they'll regret it. Lena pulled back from his touch. This is what you do, isn't it? Someone crosses you and you destroy them. No trial? No due process? Just consequences. Would you prefer I let people hurt you? Let them threaten our child? Victor's voice took on an edge. Because that's the alternative. In my world, you protect what's yours or you lose it. There's no middle ground. Your world, Lena repeated. But it's my world now too, isn't it? Because I'm carrying your baby. Because I'm living in your penthouse. Because I accepted your protection. Yes. No hesitation. You're part of my world now. Which means you're under my protection, but also under my rules. What rules? You don't talk to strangers about me or my business. You don't go anywhere without security. You don't engage with people who contact you claiming to have information about me. Victor's tone was absolute. And you trust that I know how to keep you safe, even when you don't understand my methods. Lena felt anger flare hot in her chest. So I'm supposed to just blindly follow your orders? Not ask questions? Not worry about what kind of man is raising my daughter? Our daughter. And no, you're not supposed to be blind, but you are supposed to understand that some questions don't have safe answers. Victor's jaw clenched. You want to know the truth? Fine. I've hurt people who threatened my business. I've bankrupted competitors who tried to destroy me. I've used intimidation and leverage and every tool at my disposal to build what I have. Does that make me a criminal? By some definitions, yes. Does it make me someone you should fear? That's for you to decide. The honesty was somehow worse than evasion. Lena stared at him, this man who'd saved her from humiliation and given her shelter, and looked at their daughter's ultrasound with wonder. This man who'd also destroyed Caleb's life without hesitation and spoke casually about hurting people. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Pain flickered across Victor's face, quickly controlled. Then don't. I told you before, you're not a prisoner. If you want to leave, I'll arrange housing, financial support, everything you and the baby need. But you'll do it with security because I won't risk someone using you to get to me. Security, even if I leave. Especially if you leave. You're carrying my child, Lena. That makes you a target whether you're living under my roof or not. Victor's voice was bleak. The only difference is whether I can protect you directly or have to do it from a distance. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. This is insane. I just wanted a normal life. A safe place to have my baby. Not federal investigations and death threats and armed guards. I know. Victor's hand touched her shoulder carefully, like she might break. And I'm sorry. Sorry that one night 7 months ago put you in this position. Sorry that I can't give you normal or safe in the way you deserve. But I can give you protected. I can give you resources. And I can promise that anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to me. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Victor stepped back, giving her space. Take some time. Think about what you want. But know this. Whatever you decide, I'm not walking away from our daughter. Or from you. You can leave this penthouse, but you can't leave my protection. That's not negotiable. He left before Lena could respond, disappearing into his office and closing the door with careful control. Lena stood in the bathroom, her reflection showing a woman caught between two impossible choices. Go back to poverty and vulnerability, alone, but free from Victor's dangerous world, or stay under his protection, safe, but complicit in whatever darkness surrounded him. The baby kicked, a sharp reminder that this wasn't just about Lena anymore. Whatever choice she made affected the small life growing inside her. The daughter who deserved safety and security and a future that wasn't defined by her mother's mistakes. Lena's phone rang again. Different number, but the same prickling sense of threat. She answered before she could reconsider. Ms. Brooks, this is Detective Chen again. I'd like to ask you some questions about your relationship with Victor Romano. I already told you to contact his lawyer. This isn't about the convenience store incident. This is about a pattern we've been tracking. Women who get involved with Romano accept his financial support, then disappear when they become inconvenient. The detective's voice was professional, but edged with concern. I'm worried about your safety. Lena's blood went cold. What are you talking about? 3 women in the past 5 years, all had relationships with Romano, all accepted money or housing or other support, all eventually cut contact with friends and family before disappearing completely. Disappearing how? That's what we're trying to determine. No bodies, no missing persons reports filed by Romano, just gone. Off the grid. A pause. Look, I can't prove anything, but I can tell you that women in your position tend to end up in bad situations. If you need help, if you want protection, I'm fine, Lena heard herself say. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine. She ended the call with shaking hands and immediately searched her phone for news about missing women connected to Victor Romano. Nothing came up. No articles, no police reports, no pattern of disappearances. Either Detective Chen was lying, or the information was being suppressed somehow. Victor's office door opened. He emerged looking grim, his phone still in his hand. The number that called you earlier was a burner phone, already destroyed. But we traced the purchase to a store in Brooklyn. Security footage shows a man named Marcus Webb bought it yesterday. Victor's expression was cold. Webb works for the Chen family organization, competitors of mine who've been trying to gain territory in the import business. Detective Chen just called me again, Lena said. She told me 3 women have disappeared after getting involved with you. Victor's face went completely blank. What? She said there's a pattern. Women who accept your support, then vanish. No bodies, no missing persons reports, just gone. Lena watched him carefully. Is it true? No. The word was absolute. There are no missing women, no pattern. Chen is lying to scare you away from me. Why would a detective lie? Because she's not actually a detective. Victor pulled up something on his phone and showed it to Lena. A photo of a woman in her 30s, Asian features, professional headshot. This is Detective Lisa Chen. This is what she actually looks like. Lena stared at the photo. The woman who'd called her had sounded older, rougher. The person calling you is using her name and probably a spoofed department number to sound official. But they're not police. They're working for the Chen family, trying to isolate you from me by making you afraid. Victor's voice was tight with controlled fury. And they almost succeeded. How do I know you're telling the truth? Call the police department. Ask to be transferred to Detective Lisa Chen. Verify her identity. Victor handed her his phone. Go ahead. I'll wait. Lena took the phone and made the call. The desk sergeant transferred her, and a woman's voice answered, younger than the fake detective, with a completely different tone. This is Detective Chen. Someone called me claiming to be you. About Victor Romano. A pause. Can you describe the caller? Lena did, including the claims about missing women. Detective Chen's voice grew sharp. That wasn't me. And there are no missing persons cases connected to Victor Romano in our system. Someone is impersonating a police officer, which is a felony. I'll need you to come in and make a statement. Lena ended the call and handed Victor back his phone, feeling sick. They're trying to break us apart, Victor said quietly. The Chen family knows you're my weak point. If they can convince you I'm dangerous, convince you to leave, they eliminate my motivation to protect my territory. Or worse, they grab you and use you as leverage. This is insane, Lena whispered. I'm nobody. Why would anyone care about me? You're carrying my child. That makes you everything. Victor's hands framed her face gently. And that's why I need you to trust me. Not blindly, not without questions, but enough to know that everything I do is about keeping you safe. What are you going to do about the Chen family? What I always do with threats. Victor's expression went cold. Eliminate them before they become bigger problems. You mean? I'm going to make it very clear that you're off limits, that anyone who contacts you, threatens you, or tries to manipulate you will face consequences they can't afford. His voice softened. But I need to know you're with me on this, that you're not going to run the first time someone tells you I'm dangerous. Lena thought about the convenience store, Caleb on his knees, the destruction of his life before breakfast, thought about the federal investigations that went nowhere, and the articles painting Victor as a criminal who always escaped justice. Thought about the fake detective, and the burner phone and the chess game being played with her as the prize. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you careful." Victor's thumb traced her cheekbone. "But don't let them weaponize your fear against me. We're on the same side, Lena. Whatever my past, whatever my business, I'm on your side. Always." "How can I know that?" "Because if I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it already. If I wanted to use you, I wouldn't have given you a choice about staying." Victor's voice dropped. "And because when I look at that ultrasound picture, I see a future I never thought I'd have. A daughter, a family, something worth protecting with everything I am." Lena saw the truth in his eyes, raw and unguarded. This dangerous man with his federal investigations and his ruthless business practices genuinely wanted their child, wanted her, not as a possession to control, but as something precious to shelter. "Okay," she said, for what felt like the 100th time since meeting him. "I'm staying, but I need you to be honest with me. No more evasions. If something's happening, if someone's threatening us, I need to know." "Agreed, on one condition." "What?" "You follow my security protocols. You don't go anywhere alone. You don't engage with anyone who contacts you about me without telling me first. And if something feels wrong, you call me immediately." Victor's voice was absolute. "I can't protect you if you hide things from me." "Fine. But that goes both ways. You don't hide things from me either." "Deal." Victor pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her carefully. "The Chen family made a mistake going after you. They're going to learn what happens when you threaten what's mine." Lena let herself lean into his strength, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear. Outside the penthouse windows, the city spread out in afternoon light, beautiful and dangerous and full of people playing games she didn't understand. But here, in Victor's arms, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Protected, claimed, worth fighting for. Whatever happened next, whatever consequences came from the Chen family's threats or the fake detective's lies, Lena knew one thing with absolute certainty. Victor Romano would burn down the world before he let anyone hurt their daughter. And she was starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, that kind of ruthless protection was exactly what she needed. The phone in Victor's pocket buzzed. He checked it and his expression went hard. "What is it?" Lena asked. "Marcus Webb just tried to access the parking garage. My security stopped him." Victor's voice was ice. "He's demanding to see you, says he has information you need to hear." "What kind of information?" "Doesn't matter, he's not getting near you." Victor was already moving toward his office. "Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone but me or Margaret." "Victor, I mean it, Lena. Lock the door behind me. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe." He disappeared into the elevator before she could argue. Lena stood alone in the vast penthouse and locked the door with shaking hands, then went to the window to look down at the street far below. 2 black SUVs pulled up to the building's entrance. Men in suits emerged, moving with military precision. Victor appeared moments later, his posture radiating controlled violence. Lena couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Marcus Webb, a heavy-set man with a cruel face, step forward from a third vehicle. Saw Victor's hand move in a gesture that brought his security closing in. Saw Webb's expression shift from confidence to fear. The confrontation lasted less than 3 minutes. Then Webb was being shoved into one of the SUVs and driven away, and Victor was returning to the building with his security forming a protective perimeter. When he returned to the penthouse, his knuckles were bruised and there was blood on his collar that Lena was certain wasn't his. "Is he dead?" she asked quietly. "No, but he understands the consequences of coming near you now." Victor stripped off his jacket and went to wash his hands. "The Chen family will get the message. You're not a pawn they can use." Lena watched him clean the blood from his skin with methodical precision and felt something shift inside her. This was her life now, violence and protection intertwined. A man who would hurt others to keep her safe. A world where threats were eliminated and consequences were absolute. She should have been horrified. Instead, she felt the baby kick and thought about what kind of life she wanted for their daughter. Safety over ideology, protection over principles. A father who would do anything, absolutely anything, to keep her safe. "Thank you," Lena said quietly. Victor looked up from the sink, surprise flickering across his face. For what? For protecting us. Even when it's ugly. Even when it costs you. Victor dried his hands and crossed to her, pulling her close with a gentleness that contrasted starkly with the violence he'd just committed. Protecting you doesn't cost me anything, he murmured against her hair. Losing you would cost me everything. And standing there in his arms, feeling safe for the first time in months, Lena finally understood the bargain she'd made. She'd traded her old life for this one. Poverty for luxury, invisibility for protection, normal for dangerous. And she didn't regret it for a second. The confrontation with Marcus Webb changed something fundamental in the penthouse. Victor's security doubled overnight, faces Lena didn't recognize taking positions in the lobby and hallways, their presence a constant reminder that the threats against her weren't theoretical anymore. She'd become a target simply by existing in Victor's orbit, and the realization settled over her like a weight she couldn't shake. 2 weeks passed in strange suspension. Victor worked from home more often, his office calls conducted in multiple languages, while Lena tried to build some semblance of routine in a life that felt increasingly surreal. Dr. Morrison scheduled weekly appointments now, monitoring the pregnancy with the kind of attention Lena had never imagined receiving. The baby, their daughter, confirmed and real, grew stronger each day, her kicks becoming more insistent as if she sensed the tension surrounding her arrival. Margaret visited daily, bringing groceries and prenatal supplies, and occasionally just sitting with Lena to talk about normal things like books and movies and whether the nursery should be painted soft yellow or mint green. The kindness felt genuine, but Lena couldn't shake the awareness that Margaret worked for Victor first and befriended her second. It was Margaret who brought the news on a gray afternoon when rain streaked the penthouse windows and Lena felt more restless than usual. There's been a development with the Chen family situation, Margaret said carefully, setting down her usual delivery of organic produce and specialized teas. Victor asked me to brief you since he's tied up in meetings. Lena's hand went automatically to her stomach. What kind of development? The federal prosecutor's office announced indictments this morning. 8 members of the Chen organization, including the head of the family, charged with racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Margaret's expression remained neutral. It's all over the news. The FBI executed raids simultaneously across 4 states. Lena felt cold creep down her spine. Victor did this. The federal government did this. Victor simply provided information that helped their existing investigation reach critical mass. Margaret poured tea with steady hands. The Chen family made the mistake of threatening you. Victor made sure they couldn't threaten anyone again. Information, Lena repeated. What kind of information? The kind that comes from having resources and connections the Chen family underestimated. Margaret met her eyes. Victor's been collecting evidence on their operations for years. Insurance, he called it. When they went after you, he gave everything to the FBI. Financial records, shipping manifests, communications. Enough to build an airtight case. So he didn't have them killed or, no, he destroyed them legally, which is often more permanent than violence. Margaret's smile was thin. The Chen family will spend the next decade fighting federal charges. Their assets are frozen, their operations dismantled. They're finished as a threat. Lena should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the weight of understanding what Victor was capable of when properly motivated. He'd kept evidence on criminal competitors for years, waiting for the right moment to deploy it. Had probably done the same with other rivals, building arsenals of information to use as weapons when needed. How many other families does he have information on? Lena asked quietly. Margaret hesitated. That's a question for Victor. But you know. I know Victor is always 3 steps ahead of his competitors, and I know that threatening you was the worst mistake the Chen family ever made. Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. He'll be home by 6. He wanted me to tell you he's bringing dinner from that Italian place you mentioned liking. After Margaret left, Lena stood at the windows watching rain blur the city into abstract shapes. She'd been in the penthouse for 2 weeks now, and the initial shock had faded into something more complicated. Gratitude for the safety and comfort, yes, but also a growing awareness of the price that safety demanded. Victor had destroyed Caleb's life for humiliating her. had physically confronted Marcus Webb for threatening her, had dismantled an entire criminal organization for daring to make her a target. The pattern was clear. Anyone who hurt Lena paid a price calibrated to their offense. It should have frightened her. Part of her recognized that a normal, healthy response would be fear of a man with that much power and that little hesitation about using it. But the truth was more complicated. Because every time Victor unleashed consequences on someone who'd threatened her, Lena felt a dark satisfaction she couldn't quite suppress. Caleb had spent 2 years making her feel worthless, and now he was broke and unemployed and learning what powerlessness actually meant. The Chen family had tried to manipulate her with lies and fear, and now they faced federal prison. Maybe that made her complicit. Maybe accepting Victor's protection meant accepting the violence that came with it. The elevator chimed at exactly 6 o'clock. Victor emerged carrying bags from Rosario's, the small Italian restaurant 3 blocks from Lena's old apartment. She'd mentioned it once in passing, said their carbonara reminded her of better times, and apparently, Victor had filed that information away for future use. "You remembered," Lena said as he unpacked containers of pasta, fresh bread, and the tiramisu she'd once told him she craved during the pregnancy. "I remember everything you tell me." Victor's smile was warm as he plated the food. "How are you feeling? Margaret said she briefed you about the Chen situation." She did. Lena accepted the plate he handed her, the smell of garlic and cream making her stomach growl despite her complicated feelings. "You had evidence on them all along. You were just waiting for the right time to use it." "I was waiting for them to give me a reason. They did." Victor settled across from her with his own plate. "Are you upset?" "I don't know what I am." Lena twirled pasta on her fork, not eating yet. "You just destroyed 8 people's lives before dinner, and I'm sitting here grateful because it means I'm safer. What does that make me?" "Smart, practical. A mother protecting her child." Victor's voice was matter-of-fact. "Those 8 people made their choices, Lena. They chose to build their wealth through crime. They chose to threaten you when I made it clear you were off limits. They chose to ignore every warning I gave them. I just made sure their choices had appropriate consequences. You're not the law, Victor." "No, but I understand how the law works and how to make it serve justice when the system moves too slowly." He finally started eating, his movements relaxed despite the weight of their conversation. The FBI had been investigating the Chen family for 3 years with limited success. I gave them everything they needed to actually prosecute. Those people are going to prison because they're guilty, not because I manufactured evidence. But you had the evidence all along. You could have given it to the FBI years ago. I could have, but then I'd lose the leverage that evidence provided. In my world, information is currency. You don't spend it unless you're getting something valuable in return. Victor met her eyes. "Your safety is valuable enough to spend anything I have, including leverage I've been cultivating for half a decade." Lena forced herself to eat, tasting the rich carbonara without really appreciating it. "What happens when you run out of leverage? When the next threat comes and you've already spent all your ammunition?" "I acquire new ammunition. I'm always collecting information, always building advantages." Victor's smile was sharp. "The difference is now I have motivation beyond business survival. I have you and our daughter to protect. That makes me significantly more dangerous to anyone foolish enough to threaten what's mine." The possessive still sent warmth through Lena despite everything. She was his. Their daughter was his. And he would burn the world to keep them safe. "Caleb called me today," Lena said quietly. Victor's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What?" "He used a different number, said he needed to talk to me, that what you did to him was illegal and he's gathering evidence to press charges." Lena watched Victor's expression go cold. "He said his family's lawyers are building a case for harassment and tortious interference and defamation." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I hung up and blocked the number." Lena set down her fork. "But he's not going to stop, is he? He's going to keep trying to get to me, to hurt you through me. He's desperate. I destroyed his cushy life and he wants revenge." Victor pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "But he's also an idiot. Calling you directly after I warned him to stay away was a mistake. A big one." "What are you going to do?" "End this. Permanently." Victor's voice was ice. "I was willing to let Caleb live with the consequences of his unemployment and family shame. But if he's going to harass you, use you to try to hurt me, then he's crossed a line he can't uncross. Lena felt her pulse quicken. What does permanently mean? Victor looked up from his phone, his expression softening slightly. It means I'm going to make absolutely certain he never contacts you again. Not through lawyers, not through third parties, not through anonymous calls. He'll understand that even thinking your name has consequences he can't afford. You're going to hurt him. I'm going to scare him badly enough that hurting him won't be necessary. Victor stood, coming around the table to crouch beside Lena's chair. I know this is hard. I know you're not used to this kind of power being wielded on your behalf. But Caleb had his chance to walk away. He chose to escalate. That's on him. When does it end? Lena asked, hating the tremor in her voice. The threats and the retaliation and the constant fear that someone's going to use me against you? When everyone understands that using you against me is the last mistake they'll ever make. Victor's hand covered hers. I won't lie to you, Lena. This is my world. It's brutal and unforgiving, and there are always people looking for weaknesses to exploit. But you're not a weakness. You're what I'm protecting. And once enough people understand that, the threats will slow down. Once enough people get hurt, you mean? Once enough people face consequences for their actions, yes. Victor stood, heading for his office. Eat. The baby needs nutrition. I need to make some calls. He disappeared before Lena could respond, leaving her alone with rapidly cooling pasta and thoughts that circled like vultures. She managed a few more bites before giving up, wrapping the leftovers and storing them in the refrigerator that still felt too large, too full, too much like abundance she hadn't earned. The tiramisu sat untouched. She'd lost her appetite for sweetness. Through the office door, she could hear Victor's voice, low and controlled, speaking in English now. Making arrangements. Orchestrating consequences. Protecting her in the only way he knew how. Lena went to the nursery, the guest room Victor had said she could convert however she wanted. Margaret had brought paint samples and fabric swatches, catalogs of cribs and changing tables, and all the equipment a baby apparently required. The room was still empty except for the samples, waiting for Lena to make decisions that felt too permanent. She sat on the floor, harder than it used to be with her expanding belly, and spread out the paint samples. Soft yellow, mint green, pale lavender. Colors that promised innocence and safety and futures uncomplicated by federal investigations and criminal rivals. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, different from Caleb's. Lena's instinct was to ignore it, but something made her answer. Ms. Brooks, this is James Hart, Caleb's father. The voice was older, cultured, edged with barely controlled fury. I think we need to talk about what's happening to my family. Lena's mouth went dry. I don't think that's appropriate. Appropriate? James Hart's laugh was bitter. My son has been systematically destroyed by a criminal you've decided to shack up with. Our family business is in ruins because Victor Romano wielded influence we can't match. And you think appropriate matters? Your son humiliated me in public. He mocked my pregnancy. So that justifies this? Destroying his career, his reputation, bankrupting him? James Hart's voice rose. Whatever Caleb did to you, it didn't warrant this level of retaliation. But Romano doesn't understand proportional response, does he? He understands total annihilation. I didn't ask Victor to do anything to Caleb. You didn't have to. Just existing in Romano's orbit made you a weapon he could use. A pause, heavy with meaning. Do you know what kind of man you're involved with, Ms. Brooks? Do you know how many lives he's destroyed? How many people have disappeared or been ruined because they crossed him? I know he protects what's his. Lena's voice was stronger than she felt. And I know your son earned every consequence he's facing. My son is 28 years old. He made mistakes, said cruel things, acted like a privileged ass. But he didn't deserve to have his entire life dismantled. James Hart's voice dropped. I'm calling to ask you, beg you, if necessary, to convince Romano to back off. We'll drop any legal action. Caleb will never contact you again. We'll sign whatever agreements you want. Just make him stop. Lena heard the desperation underneath the anger and felt an unexpected stab of sympathy. James Hart was a father watching his son suffer, trying to protect him the only way he knew how. But then she remembered Caleb's voice in that convenience store, mocking her body, her poverty, her collapse after their breakup. remembered Ashley's laughter and the cashier's uncomfortable silence and the weight of humiliation that had made her want to disappear. "No," Lena said quietly. "I won't ask Victor to stop. Your son had every chance to walk away. He chose to call me today, to threaten legal action, to try to hurt Victor through me. Those were his choices. You're condemning him to us. I'm not condemning him to anything. He's facing consequences for his own actions." Lena felt her voice steady. Maybe if he'd learned that lesson earlier, he wouldn't be in this position now. "Romano has turned you into someone who justifies cruelty. I hope you realize that." James Hart's voice was bleak. "I hope when you are raising that child, you remember the part you played in destroying other people's families." The line went dead. Lena sat staring at her phone, James Hart's words echoing in her mind. Had Victor turned her into someone who justified cruelty? Or had she always had this capacity for cold satisfaction when people who hurt her finally faced justice? She didn't know. Couldn't tell anymore where her old self ended and this new person began. The office door opened. Victor emerged looking grim, his phone still in hand. "Caleb Hart is being arrested as we speak," he said without preamble. "Charges include stalking, harassment, and violation of a restraining order I had my lawyers file on your behalf this afternoon. His father called me, asked me to make you stop." Victor's jaw tightened. "What did you tell him?" "No." Lena met his eyes. "I told him no, that Caleb earned this." Something shifted in Victor's expression, pride mixed with concern. "You didn't have to do that. I would have handled James Hart." "I know, but he needed to hear it from me." Lena stood with effort, her hand supporting her lower back. "He said you've turned me into someone who justifies cruelty. Is he right?" Victor crossed to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. He's a father watching his son face consequences and looking for someone to blame besides his son. "You're an easy target." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But you're not cruel, Lena. You're just done being a victim." "Is there a difference?" "Yes. Victims accept abuse. You're refusing to accept it anymore." Victor pulled her closer. "That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation." Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she hadn't crossed some moral line by accepting, even encouraging, Victor's retaliation against the people who'd hurt her. But the satisfaction she'd felt hearing about Caleb's arrest sat uneasily in her chest alongside the memory of James Hart's desperate voice. "The baby's moving," she said quietly, deflecting from thoughts too complicated to untangle. Victor's hand went immediately to her stomach, his expression softening as he felt their daughter kick. Strong, like her mother. "I'm not strong. I'm just surviving." "Same thing." Victor's voice was absolute. "And you're teaching our daughter that survival sometimes means fighting back. That's not a bad lesson." Maybe it wasn't. Maybe in Victor's world, her world now too, that lesson was the difference between safety and destruction. The next morning brought news that spread through Victor's network like wildfire. Caleb Hart had been released on bail within hours of his arrest, his family's remaining resources deployed to secure the best defense attorneys money could buy. But the charges stuck, and the restraining order stood, and the message was clear. Lena Brooks was untouchable. Margaret arrived with the daily delivery and an unusual request. "Victor wants to know if you'd be willing to meet with his sister," she said carefully. "Elena Romano. She's in town for business and wants to meet the woman carrying her future niece." Lena felt panic spike. Victor has a sister? He never mentioned... He doesn't talk about his family much, but Elena is important to him. The only family he has left, really. Margaret's expression was hard to read. "She's protective, and she wants to make sure you're the right fit for Victor's life." "You mean she wants to vet me?" "Essentially, yes." Margaret's smile was sympathetic. "Elena can be intimidating, but she's fair, and if she accepts you, you'll have an ally who's almost as formidable as Victor." The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon at a restaurant Lena had only read about in magazines, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance and charged more for a single meal than Lena used to spend on groceries in a month. Victor insisted on coming with her, his hand possessive on her lower back, as they were led to a private dining room where a woman sat waiting. Elena Romano was beautiful in a way that made Lena acutely aware of her maternity dress and swollen ankles. Dark hair swept into an elegant twist, sharp cheekbones, eyes the same color as Victor's but somehow harder. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a used car and held herself with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned her place in the world. She stood when they entered, her gaze sweeping over Lena with clinical assessment. "So, you're the woman who's captured my brother's attention," Elena said. Her voice was cultured, carrying the same trace of European accent Victor sometimes revealed. "I have to admit, I'm surprised. Victor usually has better sense than to get involved with complications." "Elena," Victor's voice held warning, "be civil." "I'm always civil. I'm simply observing that pregnancy and protection are complicated combinations." Elena gestured for them to sit. "Please, let's have lunch and get to know each other." The meal that followed was an exercise in subtle interrogation. Elena asked questions that seemed casual but probed for information. Lena's background, her education, her family history, what she'd done before meeting Victor, why she'd been alone and pregnant in a convenience store at 2 a.m. Lena answered honestly, sensing that lies would be detected and punished. She explained about Caleb, about losing her job and apartment, about the 7 months of survival that had brought her to that store. Elena listened without visible reaction, occasionally asking follow-up questions that cut to the heart of things Lena would have preferred to avoid. "So you accepted my brother's protection because you had no other options," Elena said finally. "Not because you care about him, but because he offered a better alternative to poverty." "That's not fair," Lena said quietly. "I care about Victor, but yes, I was desperate. I'm not going to pretend I would have made the same choices if I'd had resources." "Honest. I appreciate that." Elena took a sip of wine, expensive red that Lena couldn't drink. "Most women in your position would claim love at first sight or pretend the money doesn't matter. You're at least clear-eyed about the transactional nature of your arrangement." "It's not transactional," Victor cut in, his voice hard. "Lena is carrying my child. That makes our relationship about more than resources or convenience." "Does it?" Elena turned to her brother. "You barely know this woman, Victor. One night 7 months ago and a few weeks of cohabitation don't constitute a relationship. They constitute a situation you're managing." "Careful," Victor warned. But Elena wasn't deterred. "I'm saying what needs to be said. You're making yourself vulnerable for a woman who might not deserve that vulnerability, who might take what you're offering and leave the moment she has enough resources to be independent." "I wouldn't," Lena heard herself say. "I'm not using Victor. I'm grateful for his protection, yes. But I'm not going to abandon him or our daughter the moment it's convenient." "How can you promise that? You don't know what you'll feel when the baby is born, when the danger passes, when you have financial security and options." Elena's gaze was relentless. "My brother is giving you everything. What are you giving him besides a child he didn't plan for?" The question hit harder than it should have. What was she giving Victor? Compliance? Gratitude? The satisfaction of protecting something that belonged to him? "She's giving me trust," Victor said before Lena could answer. "In a world where everyone wants something from me, where every relationship is calculated for advantage, Lena sees me as a person, not a resource or a threat or an opportunity. That's worth more than you know." Elena's expression softened fractionally. "I hope you're right. I hope she's as genuine as you believe, because if she's not, if she hurts you, I'll make the Chen family's destruction look gentle." The threat hung in the air, absolute and sincere. "Understood," Lena said quietly. "But I'm not going to hurt him. Or our daughter. This is my life now. I'm choosing it freely, knowing what it means." Elena studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we understand each other. Welcome to the family, Lena, such as it is." The acceptance from Elena Romano changed something fundamental in Lena's relationship with Victor's world. Over the following weeks, she found herself drawn deeper into a life she'd never imagined. Dinners with business associates whose polite conversation barely masked the ruthless calculations underneath. Charity events where Victor's presence commanded immediate attention. Meetings where decisions worth millions were made with handshakes and carefully chosen words. Elena visited twice more, each time with gifts for the baby and advice delivered with the bluntness of someone who'd never learned to soften truth. She taught Lena how to read the power dynamics in Victor's circles, how to identify genuine threats versus empty posturing, how to carry herself with the confidence expected of Victor Romano's partner. Because that's what Lena had become, even without formal declaration. Victor's partner, the mother of his child, the woman who stood beside him at events and held his hand through the nights, when business kept him awake with strategic planning. The penthouse felt less borrowed now. Lena had painted the nursery a soft yellow that reminded her of sunrise, had filled it with furniture she'd chosen herself from catalogs Margaret brought. The closet held maternity clothes that actually fit, shoes that didn't hurt her swollen feet, items that belonged to her rather than being temporary loans from someone else's life. Dr. Morrison confirmed the baby was thriving, 34 weeks now, gaining weight appropriately, positioned perfectly for birth. Everything was proceeding exactly as it should, the doctor said with satisfaction, as if Lena's previous months of inadequate prenatal care had been erased by these recent weeks of proper nutrition and medical attention. But the past wasn't so easily erased. Caleb's legal case ground forward despite his family's best attorneys, the restraining order ensuring he couldn't contact Lena directly, but not preventing the poison his lawyers spread through court filings. They painted Victor as a dangerous criminal who'd entrapped Lena, herself as a victim manipulated by wealth and fear, the whole situation as evidence of intimidation and abuse of power. Victor's lawyers countered with evidence of Caleb's harassment, his public humiliation of Lena, his own history of entitled cruelty. But the narrative had been seeded, and Lena felt it growing in whispers at the event she attended with Victor. Speculation about what kind of woman would choose a man like Romano, whether the pregnancy was real or fabricated, if she was complicit in his alleged crimes or truly a victim. It was James Hart who finally broke the stalemate, appearing at the penthouse lobby on a gray morning 6 weeks after his first phone call to Lena. Security stopped him immediately, but he stood in the marble entrance looking diminished and desperate, asking only to speak with Ms. Brooks for 5 minutes. Victor wanted to refuse. Lena saw it in the set of his jaw, the cold fury in his eyes when security called to report Hart's presence. But she put her hand on his arm and said quietly, "Let him up. This needs to end. He doesn't deserve your consideration. Maybe not, but I need to hear what he has to say." Lena met Victor's eyes. "Please, trust me." Victor's expression remained hard, but he nodded. 5 minutes, and I'm staying in the room." James Hart emerged from the elevator looking like he'd aged a decade in 6 weeks. His expensive suit hung loose, his face was haggard, his eyes held the hollow exhaustion of someone who'd fought every battle and lost them all. "Ms. Brooks," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you for seeing me." "You have 5 minutes," Victor said coldly. "Use them wisely." James Hart glanced at Victor, then back to Lena. "I came to apologize for Caleb's behavior in that store, for my own presumption in calling you, and trying to manipulate you into intervening, for everything my family has put you through." Lena gestured to a chair. "Sit. You look like you need to." Hart sat heavily, his hand shaking slightly. "Caleb is in jail. The bail was revoked after he violated the restraining order by having a friend call you 3 weeks ago. Did you know that?" Lena hadn't. She glanced at Victor, who nodded confirmation. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you," Victor said. "The friend has also been charged. The threat was eliminated." "The threat," Hart repeated bitterly. "My son is many things, entitled, cruel, foolish, but he's not a threat. He's a broken boy who made terrible choices and is paying a price far beyond what he deserves." "He harassed a pregnant woman," Victor said flatly. "Violated a court order. Continued to attempt contact after being explicitly warned of consequences. What price would be appropriate for that? Not this. Not destruction." Hart's voice cracked. "Our business is gone. My wife has filed for divorce because she can't bear watching what's happening to Caleb. My daughter won't speak to me because she blames me for not protecting her brother. And Caleb—" He stopped, composing himself with visible effort. "Caleb attempted suicide 2 days ago in his cell. He survived, but barely." The words hit Lena like a physical blow. She'd known Caleb was in jail, had felt a dark satisfaction at his arrest. But this was beyond punishment into genuine destruction. I'm sorry, she whispered. Are you? Hart's eyes met hers, and Lena saw real question there, not accusation. Because I can't tell anymore if you wanted justice or revenge, if you're satisfied with what's happened or horrified by it. Lena didn't know how to answer. The truth was complicated, layered with emotions she couldn't fully untangle. Satisfaction at Caleb facing consequences. Horror at the scope of his suffering. Relief that he couldn't hurt her anymore. Guilt that her protection had cost him everything, including nearly his life. I wanted him to stop hurting me, she said finally. I didn't want him destroyed. I didn't want him to try to kill himself. But you accepted Romano's protection knowing what it would mean, knowing the kind of man he is, the kind of power he wields. Hart's voice was weary rather than angry. You made a choice to align yourself with someone who doesn't know the meaning of proportional response. That makes you responsible for the consequences. Careful, Victor warned, his voice dropping to something dangerous. But Lena held up a hand. He's right. I made a choice. I chose safety over mercy, protection over compassion. She looked at Hart directly. I'm sorry about what happened to Caleb. Genuinely sorry. But I'm not sorry I accepted Victor's protection. And I'm not going to ask him to stop defending me just because the cost is higher than I anticipated. Hart nodded slowly, like this was the answer he'd expected. Then I'm asking something else. Something smaller. He pulled papers from his jacket pocket. Caleb's lawyers want to negotiate a settlement. Drop all charges in exchange for a formal agreement that he'll never contact you again, never speak about you publicly, never come within 1,000 feet of you or your child. He'll accept a permanent restraining order. Accept exile from this city if that's what Romano requires. Just, please, let my son survive this. Victor took the papers, scanning them with the practiced eye of someone who'd reviewed countless contracts. His expression remained neutral, but Lena felt the tension in his shoulders. This is acceptable, Victor said after a long moment. With additions. The Hart family will also cease all legal action against me personally. James Hart will resign from the boards of any organizations where I hold influence. And Caleb will complete a minimum of 5 years supervised probation, including mandatory counseling. Victor, Lena said softly. He tried to kill himself. Maybe nothing. Victor's voice was absolute. He doesn't get to escape consequences by attempting suicide. He gets help, gets supervision, and gets his life back if he proves he can handle it responsibly. That's more mercy than he showed you. Hart looked between them, then nodded. I'll agree to your terms. All of them. Just let my son out of jail. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork. Caleb will be released pending completion of the agreement. Victor's expression remained cold. But understand this, Mr. Hart. If he violates any term, if he comes near Lena or our daughter, if he even speaks her name in public, I will destroy what's left of him so thoroughly you'll wish I'd simply had him killed. Am I clear? Crystal. Hart stood with effort. Thank you. I know you don't think you owe us mercy, but thank you anyway. He left without another word, his shoulders bowed under the weight of defeat. After the elevator doors closed, Lena turned to Victor. You were going to accept the settlement anyway, weren't you? Before he even came here. I was considering it. Caleb in jail was making him a martyr. Caleb on probation, exiled, under constant supervision. That's a more effective punishment. Victor pulled Lena close. But I wanted you to see Hart beg. Wanted you to understand what happens when people hurt you. They don't just lose, they break. Lena should have been disturbed by the satisfaction in his voice. Instead, she felt that same dark recognition she'd been fighting for weeks. She was grateful for Victor's ruthlessness, relieved that people who hurt her faced consequences beyond what courts could impose. Complicit in a system of retribution that operated outside the law. I'm becoming like you, she said quietly. No, you're becoming yourself. The version that doesn't accept being treated as worthless. Victor's hand settled over her stomach where their daughter kicked with increasing insistence. That's not a bad thing, Lena. That's survival. The settlement was finalized within a week. Caleb Hart was released from jail into mandatory counseling and probation. His family's remaining assets liquidated to pay legal fees and settlement costs. He left the city 2 days later, relocating to his mother's family in Oregon, a broken man exiled from the life he'd known. Lena felt relief more than triumph. The threat was ended. Caleb couldn't hurt her anymore. Their daughter would be born into a world where her mother's past humiliation had been answered with such overwhelming force that no one would dare repeat it. But the victory felt hollow somehow, purchased with suffering that exceeded the original crime. Elena noticed during her next visit, studying Lena with sharp eyes over tea in the penthouse living room. "You're feeling guilty," Elena said bluntly, "about the Hart boy. He tried to kill himself because of what we did to him. Because of what he did to himself. His choices, his consequences." Elena's voice was matter of fact. "You didn't humiliate him in public. You didn't violate a restraining order. You didn't force him into a cell where he decided death was preferable to living with what he'd become. He did all of that himself. But Victor's retaliation was proportional to the threat. A man who humiliates a pregnant woman, who continues to harass her after being warned, who uses his family's resources to make her life difficult. That man needs to understand he can't act with impunity." Elena leaned forward. "My brother gave him multiple chances to walk away. Hart chose escalation every time. What happened to him was justice, not cruelty." "It feels like cruelty. Because you're not used to wielding power. You're used to accepting abuse and moving on, but that's not how this world works." Elena's expression softened fractionally. "You're going to be a mother soon, and that child will need a mother who understands that protecting her sometimes means being ruthless with people who threaten her. Would you rather she grow up watching you accept humiliation, or watching you stand beside a man who destroys anyone foolish enough to make you feel worthless?" The question hit at the heart of Lena's conflict. What example was she setting for their daughter? Acceptance of abuse or participation in retribution? Mercy or strength? Compassion or survival? She didn't know. Couldn't reconcile the woman she'd been with the woman she was becoming. The answer came unexpectedly 2 weeks later when Lena's water broke at 37 weeks, 3 weeks earlier than expected, but within normal range according to Dr. Morrison's calm assessment over the phone. Victor transformed from controlled businessman to barely controlled panic in seconds, his hands shaking as he grabbed the hospital bag they'd prepared, his voice tight with fear as he called for the car. "It's okay," Lena kept saying, even as contractions started rolling through her with increasing intensity. "This is normal. The doctor said 37 weeks is fine." "Nothing about this is fine. You're in pain. Our daughter is coming early. Fine is not the word I'd use." Victor helped her into the elevator, his arm around her waist, his face pale. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of contractions and Victor's tense silence, his hand crushing hers in the back seat while his security cleared traffic ahead of them. They arrived at City General to find Dr. Morrison already there, a private suite prepared, everything arranged with the efficiency money and influence could provide. Labor was long and brutal, and nothing like the peaceful birth scenarios Lena had read about. 15 hours of increasing pain, of exhaustion that made her question whether she could continue. A Victor beside her the entire time looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him. "I can't do this," she gasped during a particularly vicious contraction. "I can't. It's too much." "You can. You are." Victor's voice was rough with emotion. "You're the strongest person I know, Lena. You survived 7 months alone. You survived poverty and humiliation and threats from people who wanted to break you. You can survive this. What if something goes wrong? What if the baby—" "Nothing's going wrong. Dr. Morrison is here. The best neonatal team in the city is standing by. Our daughter is going to be fine. You're going to be fine." His hand framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I won't let anything happen to either of you, I promise." The absolute certainty in his voice cut through Lena's panic. Victor Romano, who destroyed criminal organizations and made grown men beg, who wielded power like a weapon and showed mercy only on his own terms. This man was promising to protect her and their daughter against whatever came. And she believed him. 30 minutes later, Sofia Romano entered the world screaming her outrage at the indignity of birth. 6 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect, furious humanity with dark hair and eyes that would probably match her father's, and lungs that announced her displeasure with impressive volume. Lena held her daughter and felt every complicated emotion of the past months crystallize into single, overwhelming certainty. This child, this small, perfect person, was worth everything. Worth accepting Victor's protection. Worth the destruction of people who threatened her. Worth becoming someone harder and less forgiving than Lena had been before. "She's beautiful," Victor whispered, his voice breaking as he touched Sophia's tiny hand with reverent gentleness. "Perfect, just like her mother." "I'm not perfect." "You are to me. You gave me this." Victor's eyes were wet when he looked up. "A daughter, a family, a future I never thought I'd have. How is that anything less than perfect?" Sophia chose that moment to quiet, her small face turning toward Victor's voice with what might have been recognition. He made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and carefully took his daughter from Lena's arms. Watching Victor hold Sophia, this dangerous man cradling their newborn with such profound tenderness, Lena understood finally what Elena had been trying to tell her. Power wasn't just about destruction. It was about protection, about creating safety in a world that offered none. About ensuring the people you loved never had to face threats alone. Victor had given her that, had taken a woman who'd been invisible and made her central to his world, had claimed their daughter before she was born and promised her a life of security and opportunity, had destroyed anyone who tried to hurt them, not out of cruelty, but out of love, expressed in the only language he truly spoke, absolute, ruthless protection. "Marry me," Victor said quietly, his eyes still on Sophia. Lena's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Not because you owe me, or because you need protection. Because I love you. Because I want our daughter to grow up watching her parents choose each other every day." Victor looked up, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "Because the thought of a future without you in it is unbearable." "You love me?" Lena felt tears streaming down her face. "Since when?" "Since that night 7 months ago when you sat in a hotel bar looking beautiful and broken and told me about feeling like you weren't enough. Since you left before morning without your number because you were afraid I'd regret you." Victor's smile was soft. "Since I spent months looking for you and then found you in a convenience store being destroyed by a small man and knew I'd burn down the world before I let anyone make you feel worthless again." "That's not love. I don't know what that is." "It's love the way I understand it. Protection. Devotion. The absolute certainty that you and Sophia are the most important things in my life." Victor shifted Sophia to one arm and took Lena's hand with the other. "I know I'm not what you imagined. I know my world is dangerous and my methods are ruthless. But I'm yours, Lena. Completely. If you'll have me." Lena looked at the man holding their daughter, at the future he was offering. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't safe or normal or anything she'd thought she wanted. But it was real. And it was hers. And the man offering it had proved again and again that he'd protect her against anything. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Victor's smile transformed his face, making him look younger and less burdened. He leaned forward carefully, mindful of the baby between them, and kissed Lena with a gentleness that promised forever. The wedding happened 2 months later in a private ceremony attended by Elena, Margaret, and a handful of Victor's closest associates. Lena wore ivory silk that accommodated her still recovering body and held Sophia through the vows, their daughter sleeping peacefully through the promises her parents made. Victor slid a platinum ring onto Lena's finger, a single diamond so large it felt obscene, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. His own ring was simple platinum, unadorned, a circle that represented the commitment he was making. "I promise to protect you and our daughter with everything I am," Victor said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "To give you the life you deserve. To destroy anyone who threatens what we're building here. To love you until the day I die and beyond, if such things are possible." Lena felt tears streaming down her face as she made her own promises. "I promise to stand beside you in this world you've brought me into. To trust your protection even when I don't understand your methods. To raise our daughter to be strong and fierce and unafraid. To love you for exactly who you are, not who I might have wanted you to be." The officiant pronounced them married, and Victor kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. Sophia woke and made her displeasure known, and the moment dissolved into laughter as they soothed their daughter together. The months that followed brought a rhythm Lena had never known. Days spent caring for Sophia, who grew from a tiny newborn into a baby with Victor's eyes and Lena's smile. Nights in Victor's arms, learning his body the way she'd learned his mind, slowly, carefully, with growing trust and deepening love. Events where she stood beside him as his wife, watching him navigate his dangerous world while knowing she and Sophia were protected from its worst elements. Elena became a regular presence, teaching Lena the language of power, while doting on her niece with surprising tenderness. Margaret remained a steady friend, helping Lena adjust to the massive changes in her life with patience and practical wisdom. And Caleb Hart remained in Oregon, his probation keeping him far from the life he'd destroyed and the woman he'd tried to break. Lena received updates occasionally through Victor's network. Caleb was working a normal job, attending therapy, trying to rebuild something from the ruins of his entitlement. She felt sympathy for him now, distant and complicated, but no longer tinged with guilt. He'd made his choices. She'd made hers. They were both living with the consequences. 6 months after Sophia's birth, Lena stood in the penthouse nursery watching Victor rock their daughter to sleep, his deep voice soft as he sang a lullaby in the language of his childhood. Sophia's eyes drifted closed, her small hand clutching her father's finger with absolute trust. This was her life now. A dangerous man who sang lullabies, a daughter who would grow up protected by power most people couldn't imagine. A world where threats were eliminated and love was expressed through ruthless devotion. It wasn't what Lena had imagined when she'd stood in that convenience store 7 months pregnant and drowning in humiliation. Wasn't the fairy tale ending she'd once believed in. But it was real, and it was hers. And watching Victor kiss Sophia's forehead with infinite gentleness before placing her in her crib, Lena knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Some women were saved by princes in shining armor. Lena had been saved by a man in a $1,000 suit who understood that sometimes love meant destroying the people who tried to hurt what you cherished. And as Victor pulled her close in the doorway, their daughter sleeping peacefully behind them, Lena whispered against his chest the truth she'd finally accepted. I love you. Not despite who you are, but because of it. Victor's arms tightened around her. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. Outside the windows, the city spread out in lights and darkness, the same view Lena had first seen when Victor brought her to this penthouse. Then, she'd been a woman with nothing, carrying a secret and surviving on hope alone. Now she was Lena Romano, wife, mother, the center of a powerful man's world. The woman who'd been humiliated in a convenience store had become someone no one would dare humiliate again. And the man who'd witnessed that humiliation had made certain the whole world understood what happened when you tried to break something he loved. Sophia stirred in her sleep, making the small sounds babies make when dreaming. Victor and Lena stood together in the doorway, watching their daughter, and Lena felt peace settle over her like a benediction. This was her family, her future, her new legacy. And it had all started with one night 7 months ago when a broken woman and a dangerous man found each other in darkness and created light.